The first red flag wasn't the smug email, it was the seating chart. My name is Barry Hudson, I'm 54, and I just watched 12 years of my corporate life get flushed down the toilet in 26 minutes. But let me back up a bit and tell you how a Gulf War veteran with 2 decades of IT experience became corporate enemy number 1 in less than half an hour. After more than a decade in the same office at Pinnacle Supply Solutions, they moved my desk from the climate-controlled server room where I could monitor everything to some windowless corner in the basement next to the new hire's ring light setup. No warning, just a Slack message on my screen that said, "Excited for your vintage perspective from the new space." Vintage perspective. Like I was some antique dealer instead of the guy who kept their entire digital infrastructure from collapsing for 12 years straight. I didn't complain. I didn't slam any drawers or call anyone names. I just packed up my Navy coffee mug, my backup drives, and my small cactus named Spike and moved downstairs. Same way I'd been handling things since 2012. Quietly, efficiently, no drama. See, I'm not the type who needs constant praise or corner offices. I need stability, routine, and a decent chair that doesn't squeak when I lean back to troubleshoot a crashed server at 2 a.m. What I got instead was Spencer Walsh, our new VP of Digital Innovation, fresh out of some coastal MBA program with a podcast about disruption and an unhealthy obsession with buzzwords. This guy was 31 years old, called our legacy IBM AS400 systems technological fossils, and thought our custom middleware was quaint. He wore $200 sneakers to board meetings and brought kombucha to staff lunches. Still, I gave him a fair shot. Even when he started making comments in team meetings like, "We need fresh energy around here, someone who grew up with smartphones, not pagers." Then he'd look right at me and add, "Barry's got such great institutional knowledge. Maybe he can help onboard someone with more digital native instincts." Digital native instincts. That was rich, coming from a guy who probably learned about computers in college while I was building networks for military operations in the Persian Gulf. But sure, tell me about innovation. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't correct him. I just logged the incidents, backed up the system configurations, and kept doing what I'd done for 12 years, making sure Pinnacle Supply Solutions stayed online while everyone else worried about their LinkedIn profiles. You want to know what 12 years looks like in my world? It's maintaining 99.8% uptime while everyone else sleeps. It's getting called at 11:30 p.m. because the automated backup failed, driving back to the office in my pajamas and having the system running again before anyone's morning coffee gets cold. It's the payroll system that processes 1,200 employee paychecks every 2 weeks without a single glitch because I rebuilt the integration in 2018 after a vendor update broke everything. It is the EDI connections to major retailers like Target and Walmart that only work because I personally know the system administrators at each location and troubleshoot issues before they escalate. It's saving the company $180,000 annually through system optimizations that nobody sees, nobody celebrates, and apparently, nobody remembers when budget review time comes around. I'm not bragging here, I'm just stating facts. When the compliance audit system crashed at midnight on a Sunday, I was the one who drove back to the office and rebuilt the entire reporting pipeline before the Monday regulatory deadline. When our main vendor changed their API without warning and our inventory tracking went haywire, I wrote custom scripts in one weekend to keep orders flowing. No bonuses, no promotions. Just a thanks for keeping the lights on email and maybe a $50 gift card to Applebee's during the holidays. But I didn't do it for applause. I did it because someone had to care, and if I didn't, nobody would. That's how it works with guys like me. The invisible infrastructure. The ones who stay calm when everyone else is losing their minds in glass conference rooms. My son, Alex Hudson, who's 21 and studying computer science at Arizona State, sometimes asks me why I put up with it. "Dad," he'll say when he's home from college, "you could make twice as much consulting. Why do you stay?" The answer was simple. Loyalty. Old-fashioned, probably stupid loyalty to a company that had given me steady work and decent benefits for over a decade. I believed that dedication mattered, that showing up every day and doing excellent work would eventually be recognized and rewarded. I was about to learn how wrong I was. The morning of February 14th started like any other Tuesday. I got to the office at 7:15 a.m., same as always, grabbed coffee from the break room, and settled into my basement corner to review the overnight logs. Everything looked normal. Servers humming along, databases syncing properly, no critical alerts. Around 10 a.m., I noticed Spencer walking through the office with Patricia Wells from HR, both of them carrying tablets and speaking in hushed tones. They'd stop at various desks, point at computer screens, and nod knowingly. Spencer was wearing his disruption consultant face, the one he practiced in mirrors. At 11:30, they stood outside my cubicle for about 3 minutes, just watching me work. I could feel them there, but I kept my eyes on my screen and continued updating firewall configurations. When I finally looked up, they'd moved on to hover around Sofia Martinez, our junior systems analyst. Sofia was 26, sharp as a tack, and one of the few people in the office who actually understood what I did for a living. She'd been shadowing me for the past 6 months, learning the intricacies of our hybrid legacy modern infrastructure. If something happened to me, she'd be the only one with even a basic understanding of how to keep things running. At 2:21 p.m., my world changed forever. A calendar invite popped up on my screen at exactly 2:21 p.m. Subject line, quick strategy chat. Time, 2:47 p.m. That gave me exactly 26 minutes to prepare for whatever fresh hell Spencer had cooked up. No agenda, no background, no meeting description. Just a smiley face emoji and the words, "Looking forward to connecting." Like we were old college buddies planning a weekend barbecue instead of whatever corporate execution he'd planned. I don't do ambush meetings, never have, never will. In the Navy, we called it proper planning prevents poor performance. You want my time? You schedule it 3 days ahead and bring bullet points, not this sunshine and rainbows nonsense. But I showed up anyway, because that's what professionals do. That's what guys like me do. Conference room B smelled like burnt coffee and bad decisions, same as always. The air conditioning hummed with that industrial white noise that makes you feel like you're trapped in a fluorescent-lit purgatory. Spencer was already there, leaning back in his ergonomic chair like he owned the place, which technically he did now. His laptop was open, displaying what looked like an organizational chart covered in red X marks. Patricia Wells from HR sat in the corner, clutching a manila folder like it contained nuclear launch codes. She was blinking too fast and had that deer-in-headlights expression that HR people get when they're about to ruin someone's life but want to pretend it's a positive career development opportunity. "Barry!" Spencer said, stretching out my name like we were old buddies. "Thanks for making time. I know you're busy keeping our systems running smoothly." The word "our" hit differently now. Like he was already planning my replacement. "First off," he continued, shifting into his corporate speak mode, "I want to thank you for everything you've done here. Truly. 12 years of dedication. That's incredible in today's fast-paced environment." I nodded, waited. When someone starts with gratitude that sounds like a performance review, the hammer's about to drop. I'd seen this movie before, just never from the victim's perspective. "We've been looking closely at department structure," Spencer continued, clicking through slides on his laptop. "Analyzing our technical debt, evaluating our human capital allocation, optimizing for maximum digital transformation velocity." More buzzwords. I could have made a drinking game out of this conversation and been unconscious by the third slide. The reality is we're heading into a new phase. Cloud-first architecture, AI-integrated workflows, DevOps, cultural transformation. We need team members who can really lean into next-generation thinking. Next-generation thinking, right? Because apparently 12 years of keeping their lights on and their paychecks flowing was old-generation thinking. "So we've made the decision to bring in someone with fresh energy," he said, not quite making eye contact. "Someone who can bridge the gap between our legacy infrastructure and our digital future, someone more digitally intuitive." Digitally intuitive, that was a new one. I'd been building and maintaining digital systems since before this kid discovered Wi-Fi, but apparently my intuition was outdated. Patricia jumped in, her voice shaking slightly. "We have a transition package that we think is very generous, Barry. Full severance, extended COBRA coverage, outplacement services, and of course we'll provide excellent references for your next opportunity." She was reading from a script. Probably the same script they used for every middle-aged employee they'd decided had outlived their usefulness. I held up my hand. Not rude, just definitive. The way you stop traffic or halt a conversation that's headed somewhere you don't want to go. "Let me save us all some time," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "You've made your decision, and now I've made mine." Spencer blinked. "Well, just to clarify, This isn't completely finalized yet. We still have some paperwork to process, transition planning to discuss. I'm not contesting it, I replied. You want someone younger, more digitally intuitive, more aligned with your vision. I understand. Thank you for the opportunity. The room went dead quiet. You could hear the HVAC system cycling and someone's phone buzzing in the distance. Patricia looked confused, like she'd prepared for an argument and I'd just handed her a surrender document. Spencer's confident smile faltered. Well, that's very professional of you, Barry. We really do appreciate your understanding. Of course, I said, standing up. I'll clean out my desk and be gone within the hour. I grabbed my water bottle and my notebook, shook both their hands like we'd just concluded a successful business meeting, and walked out of conference room B like I was heading to lunch. No tears, no raised voice, no dramatic declarations about loyalty or years of service. Just that sharp, clean silence that happens when someone who's been holding everything together suddenly isn't going to anymore. Back at my basement desk, I sat down and looked at my workstation one last time. 3 monitors displaying real-time system health, server performance graphs, network traffic analytics, all green lights, all systems running smoothly. For now. I opened my drawer and pulled out my personal USB drive, the one labeled Infrastructure Configs, Critical Systems. I'd been maintaining it for years as my own insurance policy, updating it every time I made a significant change to our setup. Not because I was planning anything vindictive, but because I knew that someday someone might need this information when I wasn't around. Today was that day. Here's the thing about the systems I'd built over 12 years. They were elegant, efficient, and completely dependent on about 47 different manual processes that only I knew how to handle. Not because I was hoarding information or trying to make myself indispensable, but because every time I'd suggested documentation training or cross-training initiatives, Spencer's predecessors had said the same thing. Maybe next quarter, Barry. We don't have the bandwidth right now, so I'd made sure the systems would run exactly as long as my access credentials remained active and not 1 second longer. I unplugged my personal devices, packed my Navy coffee mug and my backup drives into my laptop bag, and gave Spike the cactus one last water. Then I logged into my workstation and began the most important 15 minutes of work I'd ever done. I didn't delete anything. I didn't sabotage anything. I just cleaned up. Removed my personal configurations, deleted my local scripts, cleared my browser cache, and saved passwords. Standard procedure for any employee departure. The fact that those personal configurations happened to be the invisible glue holding together 12 years of accumulated technical debt wasn't my problem anymore. At exactly 2:47 p.m., I logged out of my workstation for the last time, left my keycard in the desk drawer, and walked out of Pinnacle Supply Solutions. I got in my '98 Ford F-150, started the engine, and drove home to wait for the show to begin. My house was quiet when I got there at 3:05 p.m. The good kind of quiet, where you don't feel obligated to fill the silence with noise or activity. I walked straight to the kitchen, opened the cabinet above the fridge where I kept the bourbon I'd been saving for a special occasion, and poured myself 3 fingers of Maker's Mark. Apparently getting fired on Valentine's Day qualified as special. I sat on my back porch, put my feet up on the railing, and checked my phone. Nothing urgent yet. A text from Alex asking if I'd be home for dinner when he visited this weekend. A missed call from Sophia Martinez. She probably already sensed something was wrong. That girl was sharp, sharper than anyone gave her credit for. At 3:15 p.m., my phone started buzzing. First call, Sophia. Barry, hey, sorry to bother you, but I'm getting weird errors on the vendor sync dashboard. It's saying something about authentication failure. The system was fine this morning. I let it go to voicemail. Second call, help desk. Third call, help desk again. Fourth call, Patricia from HR, probably realizing she hadn't collected my building access card. I turned my phone face down on the patio table and went inside to work on my Mustang restoration project. Nothing clears your head like rebuilding a carburetor when the corporate world is imploding behind you. See, I knew exactly what was happening over at Pinnacle. Without my active credentials, the automated vendor EDI connections would start timing out within hours. The compliance reporting scripts I'd been manually triggering every Friday afternoon would fail their next scheduled run. Most critically, the payroll integration between our HR system and the bank would hit a dead end at midnight when it tried to process tomorrow's direct deposits. That integration was my masterpiece of duct tape engineering. Back in 2019, when Pinnacle switched banking partners, The new bank's API was completely incompatible with our HR software. The vendor quoted us $85,000 in 6 months to build a proper integration. I solved it in a weekend with a custom middleware script that I ran from my personal credentials because it was faster than getting it to set up a service account. Everything would keep running just long enough for people to think the transition was smooth, then cascade into complete failure when the next batch job tried to execute. By 4:30 p.m., my missed calls counter had hit 12. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I opened a beer and called my son Alex at Arizona State. "Hey, Dad, you're home early," he said. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine," I told him. "Just had a career change today." "What kind of career change?" "The involuntary kind. Your old man got fired for being too old and not digitally intuitive enough." Alex was quiet for a moment. He'd grown up watching me work nights and weekends, fielding emergency calls during family dinners, rushing back to the office during vacations. He understood better than most people what my job actually entailed. "Their loss," he finally said. "You want me to drive down this weekend? We can work on the Mustang and you can tell me what really happened." "That sounds perfect," I said. "Bring your appetite. I'll fire up the grill." After we hung up, I went out to the garage and popped the hood on my 1967 Mustang Fastback. She was a beauty, Acapulco blue with black racing stripes, 390 V8 engine that I'd been rebuilding piece by piece for the past 3 years. Working with my hands, solving mechanical problems that had clear solutions and predictable outcomes was the perfect antidote to corporate politics. My phone kept buzzing from inside the house, but I ignored it. Instead, I focused on adjusting the timing on the distributor, a delicate process that required patience and precision. Kind of like maintaining legacy IT infrastructure, but more honest about its complexity. Around 6 p.m., I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the garage window, I saw Sofia Martinez walking up my front path. She looked stressed, carrying her laptop bag and wearing the expression of someone who'd just discovered that the building was on fire and she was the only one with a key to the fire department. "Barry?" she called out. "I know you're in there. Your truck's in the driveway." I wiped my hands on a shop rag and met her at the front door. "Sophia, I figured you'd be the first one to put the pieces together." "What happened?" she asked, cutting straight to the point. "Spencer called an all-hands meeting at 4 p.m. and said you'd decided to pursue other opportunities. Then half our systems started throwing error codes and nobody knows why." "Spencer decided I was too old for the digital transformation," I said, so I cleaned out my desk and left. Her face went pale. "Barry, the vendor sync is completely down. The compliance reports aren't generating. The payroll system is showing warning messages that I've never seen before. And Spencer keeps asking me to just fix it like I'm some kind of magician." "What did you tell him?" "That these systems are way more complex than he realizes, and that you're the only one who really understands how they all connect together." She paused. He didn't seem to believe me. I gestured for her to come in. We sat at my kitchen table, and I opened my laptop to show her the network monitoring dashboard I kept on my personal systems. Red alerts everywhere. Server timeouts, database connection failures, integration errors cascading through every major process. "This is what happens when you fire the person who's been keeping everything running," I said. "I didn't sabotage anything, Sophia. I just stopped holding it together." She stared at the screen, watching error counts tick higher in real time. "How long before everything crashes completely?" "The payroll system will fail at midnight when it tries to process tomorrow's direct deposits. After that, it's going to be a very interesting day at Pinnacle Supply Solutions. Can you fix it?" I looked at this young woman who'd been eager to learn, who'd asked good questions and taken detailed notes, who'd actually cared about understanding the work instead of just getting through her daily tasks. She reminded me of myself 30 years ago, back when I thought competence and dedication would be enough. "I could," I said. "But I don't work for Pinnacle anymore." She nodded slowly, understanding the situation perfectly. "What should I do?" "Document everything that's failing. Take screenshots of every error message. Keep detailed notes about when each system goes down and what error codes you're seeing. Tomorrow morning, Spencer's going to be in full panic mode, and someone's going to need to explain to the board exactly what happened." "And then what?" I smiled. "Then you're going to learn about the wonderful world of emergency consulting rates." Sophia left around 7 p.m. with a printed copy of my system architecture notes and a clear understanding of just how deep the hole was about to get. I made a simple dinner, watched the sunset from my back porch, and went to bed early. At 11:47 p.m., my phone started ringing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off and got the best night's sleep I'd had in years. Wednesday morning, I woke up at my usual 6:30 a.m., made coffee, and checked the news like it was any other day. The difference was, for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't worried about server alerts or overnight batch job failures. That was someone else's problem now. My phone showed 47 missed calls and 23 text messages. I turned it back off and went out to work on the Mustang. Around 10 a.m., a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. Through the garage window, I watched a man in an expensive suit get out and walk toward my front door. He had that urgent, slightly panicked expression that corporate lawyers get when their clients are hemorrhaging money by the hour. "Mr. Hudson, I'm George Patterson, corporate counsel for Pinnacle Supply Solutions. I was hoping we could talk." I wiped my hands on a shop rag and invited him into my living room. He looked around at my comfortable, lived-in space, the opposite of those sterile corporate conference rooms we'd both spent too much time in. "I'll be direct," he said. "We're experiencing some significant technical difficulties that require your expertise." "I gathered that from the 47 missed calls," I replied. "The payroll system failed at midnight. 200 employees didn't receive their direct deposits this morning. The vendor integration platform is completely down. Our compliance reporting system hasn't generated a single report since yesterday afternoon." I nodded sympathetically. "That sounds serious." "Spencer tried to bring in an emergency IT contractor," George continued. "They took one look at your infrastructure setup and said they'd need at least 2 weeks just to understand how everything connects together." 2 weeks sounds optimistic," I said. George leaned forward. "Look, Barry, I won't waste your time with corporate speak. We made a mistake, a big mistake. We're prepared to bring you back with a significant promotion and salary increase if you can help us get through this crisis." I walked to the kitchen and poured myself another cup of coffee. "That's very generous, George, but I don't work for Pinnacle anymore. We understand that. But we're prepared to make this worth your while." "I'm happy to consult," I said. "Emergency infrastructure recovery starts at $525 per hour. Minimum engagement, 30 hours. Paid in advance." The silence stretched out for a full 30 seconds. I could practically hear him calculating the cost in his head. That's $15,750 just to get started." "That's correct. Plus, I work remotely. I'm not setting foot in that office again." George pulled out his phone and made a call. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but from his expressions, it involved a lot of uncomfortable explanations to people who weren't used to being held hostage by their own infrastructure. 25 minutes later, my business account pinged with a wire transfer notification. I opened my laptop, cracked my knuckles, and logged into Pinnacle's systems remotely for the first time in 24 hours. It was worse than I'd expected. Someone had tried to fix the payroll issue by manually running database queries and had corrupted half the employee records. The vendor integration wasn't just down, it was actively spreading error messages to every connected system like a digital virus. The compliance system had given up entirely and was just displaying a sad face emoji where the reports should be. But the real beauty was what Spencer had done to try to solve the crisis. In his panic, he'd attempted to restore from backup without understanding that our backup system only covered the databases, not the custom integration scripts that made everything work together. It was like trying to fix a car engine by replacing all the bolts but leaving out the pistons. I spent 3 days methodically rebuilding what had been destroyed, documenting every process in excruciating detail, and training Sophia Martinez on the critical procedures. She was a fast learner and didn't waste time with ego or politics, just absorbed information and asked smart questions. On Friday afternoon, George called again. "Barry, the board would like to discuss bringing you back permanently. Vice President of Infrastructure Operations, 45% salary increase, full benefits package, stock options." I was in my garage, installing new brake pads on the Mustang. The work was honest, straightforward, and completely under my control. "That's very generous, George, but I'm happy consulting. The board is prepared to go higher. We could make it 60%. It's not about the money, I said, wiping grease off a socket wrench. It's about respect. You had 12 years to show me that respect, and instead you let some MBA kid with a podcast convince you I was obsolete. He was quiet for a moment. What happened to Spencer? Last I heard, he's been reassigned to special projects, George said diplomatically. In corporate speak, that meant they'd stuck him in an office with no responsibilities until his contract expired. And Sophia? She's been promoted to senior systems analyst with a team of 3 junior administrators. She's implementing all the documentation and cross-training protocols you recommended. Good, I said. She'll do fine. The consulting arrangement lasted another 4 months. Every time something critical broke, which happened more often than Pinnacle wanted to admit, they'd call me. I'd fix it remotely, send an invoice, and go back to my real life. Eventually, Sophia and her team got confident enough to handle the day-to-day operations. The emergency calls became routine maintenance requests, then occasional questions, then nothing at all, which was exactly what I wanted. These days, I spend my mornings working on restoration projects in my garage. The '67 Mustang is running like a dream, and I've started on a '73 Bronco that'll be my winter project. Afternoons, I help coach the robotics program at the local community college. Turns out young engineers actually appreciate learning from someone who understands how complex systems really work. And yes, I still do consulting work, but now it's on my terms, for clients who value experience over buzzwords, competence over corporate politics. Alex Hudson graduated last month with his computer science degree and got a job at a tech startup in Austin. He calls every Sunday to tell me about the problems they're solving and the systems they're building. Sometimes he asks for advice about dealing with managers who don't understand technology. I tell him what I learned the hard way. Respect isn't automatic, but competence is undeniable. Sometimes I drive past the Pinnacle building on my way to pick up parts for my current project. The parking lot looks the same, the lights are still on, everything appears normal. But I know what's different now. They understand the real cost of throwing away experience because someone seems inconvenient for your corporate vision. The system doesn't care about your age, your background, or your management philosophy. It only cares about whether you know what you're doing. And after 12 years of keeping their digital world spinning, I definitely knew what I was doing. The real victory wasn't the consulting money or watching Spencer crash and burn. It was finally getting the respect I'd earned, even if it took losing me for them to figure it out. That's worth more than any salary they could have offered.